Well, it's my pleasure to say bienvenue, Jean-Philippe, at the Leaders Who Care series. We could do this in French, but I'd probably do a lot easier in English. Especially since I have the Québécois français there, they may not understand me at all. So who knows?
Well, thank you, Mark. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
Thanks. Great place to start, as usual, is if you can briefly introduce yourself. And I don't know about you, but one thing I find when I ask men to introduce themselves, they usually start with "my job is" type of thing. And women, it's changing a little bit with what's happening around the world, but women are more of, let's do the family first, and then we'll get to that. Europeans are way better at it because they're not selling anything. They're like,
okay, that's a pretty
so if you can just say, like, who is Jean-Philippe? Where are you from originally? Where you are now? And a little bit family stuff like that.
Yeah. So first of all, we say, Mark, I'm a family man. I love family. I love my family and extended family. I actually was born in Algeria when Algeria was a French territory, but I left Algeria when I was 18 months old, so as a baby. Okay.
You remember a lot, right?
Yeah. Well, I've got a lot of that in my DNA because my family had been there for 3 generations. So obviously, when we came back, it was like a whole new era for family because my dad was a doctor, had to restart from scratch. We are not welcome, by the way, because people in France, French citizens as well, like us, didn't believe we were French actually anymore. So it was tough. And I have some memories of that as a kid because my dad had really to fight to basically make the family sustain and exercise his profession. He did well at the end of the day. But it was a very important part of my family, I would say, roots. I grew up in Nice, in the south of France. Yeah.
The wonders of a hotel. No, sorry, go ahead.
Okay. So I grew up in Nice, a wonderful city on the French Riviera, with the sea, with the mountains, with the sun, everything else. And I grew up in a family who was really loving being together. I was also someone very curious. So, both in terms of sports, I must say I've got a big passion for soccer, football, as we say in my part of the world.
It should be football. I never understood why it's...
Yeah, I agree with you. It shouldn't be translated to soccer. That's not right. So I played football for many, many years. I also was in love with movies, big movies, fan of all kind of movies, American movies, Italian movies, French movies, all these 3 movies. And eventually, as I grew up as well, I decided to do something which was not something done by my dad and my sister. They were all doctors, so medical family. I said, the only thing I want to do is not to be a doctor. That was my way to affirm my destiny. And one day I bumped into a businessman, honestly, not by accident. My dad actually arranged this connection when I was 16 years old. And what he talked about seemed interesting to me, but I had no clue what a business was. And so eventually I joined a business school and I graduated, and then I did many things, including Microsoft for a big part of my life. So Microsoft today, I'm EVP and President of National Transformation Partnerships.
Okay, now you're going ahead of me. Now you're going too fast for me. So, no, that's cool. That's cool, and I appreciate it. I didn't know you were from Nigeria originally. That's super fast.
Algeria, not Nigeria. Algeria.
Okay, sorry, right.
North Africa.
That's right. Okay. When you were what were you envisioning when you went into business admin at Schema, and then you became a product manager? What were you envisioning, or were you envisioning what your future was going to be?
Interesting enough, when I was in this business school, I was very curious. So I loved learning new things. At the time, by the way, the very first Apple personal computer was launched to the world, called the Apple II. Mm-hmm. Maybe many listeners were not actually born, but I was born. And I was able to start playing with it and do a little bit of programming with BASIC, the basic language, right? Because they're actually the first language developed by Microsoft, by the way, on not just on the Apple II, but actually on the PC. Mm-hmm. And because of that, I got in love with this microcomputer, this personal computer. We're just starting. So I decided for an internship to join a French startup called Memsoft. This company is not existing anymore, unfortunately. It was founded by a couple of brilliant engineers. And what they did was actually they developed an operating system for the Apple II, yes, to add more capabilities, basically data indexing and more. And I built with a friend of mine who was a developer, I was more on the sales marketing side, an accounting software, like a small SAP at the time, okay? Because there was nothing existing at the time.
Right.
And I got in love with software and this emergence of this industry called, again, technology and, of course, microcomputers, software, and so on and so forth. So that's the way I got into my passion by working with a startup. So very much doing tons of jobs at the same time, great innovation in terms of technology, and really think about the impact we can have on many small businesses at a time to get them more productive and to use the power of information.
Yeah, that's awesome. You actually remind me, when I was at Deloitte, I remember the what was called the word processing department got all excited when they got the eraser in the IBM Selectrix typewriter. So I've been around a little bit too, and that was super exciting for them beyond
sure.
it. Or the punch cards I had in college that you had to bring to the huge computer room, and if you dropped if you dropped all the cards, you were in big trouble because it's a mess. You mentioned about impact, and we're definitely going to get to leadership shortly. But for example, our firm, Fifth Element, was founded on the premise that leaders can do way, way better in business when they're doing good at the same time. Can you share one or two experiences you had you were in sales and marketing, different countries, different cultures, where you saw that or didn't see it?
You mean having an impact, right? In my job, in the mission I have. Yeah, I mean, I saw it very early on, actually, Mark. And when I was, I was actually promoted to become the country manager of Microsoft France, my home country, which was my first big leadership job, right? Many years back. I realized that my job was not just about selling software. Of course, I had a quota, of course, I had some targets to meet, and no worries. Microsoft was already pretty well-run company. But I realized that to bring the right value to my home country in France, in terms of what software means to basically, completely innovate with the economy, innovate with the society, and bring some additional value to the people, to the community, and to our customers, was a big revelation for me. And I decided at the time to basically build a mission with the local team. We had a few hundreds of employees in France, and of course, align the goals we had as a business in terms of software, we were launching in the market with the impact we could have on the economy. And I remember one of the very first kind of a citizenship kind of initiative, you could call it at the time, right? CSR was the name for many years, where all of the employees, including myself, decided to mentor underprivileged kids to find their first job, giving them confidence, getting them prepared for interviews, and using, of course, processors, spreadsheets to get more literate before getting a job. So anyway, it's a small example of what I learned in terms of aligning the business outcome and the societal impact we want to have, I think, as a company.
Yeah, it's brilliant. And as you evolved in this journey, this career journey, you had to must have been really interesting. You had to apply technology and different attitudes. I even remember with one of my older firms, everybody was afraid of this new computer coming in and going to have to learn it. It's going to change everything. And can you share that journey, and also then how that influenced your work with, for example, Microsoft's entrepreneurship for positive impact?
Yeah, I would say, a number of dimensions I've really learned along the way, Mark, of course, because, I've got like almost 40 years of Microsoft in a few months. So it took me a few years to learn, to get a little bit more wisdom, right, after many years. I mean, clearly the first one is learn to learn, appetite to learn more. And this is what we call these days growth mindset, which is really a core, I would say, a core attribute of our culture at Microsoft since our transformation. And indeed, I found that very revealing actually early on, and not just for me, for the people I love the most as well, the people I can advise, is give them the appetite and actually really stop and, and break the barriers, they have mental barriers on what they could learn. I think particularly these days, of course, generative AI on top of that, there's nothing that should prevent you from learning more, being more curious about everything, about technology, about business, about society. So growth mindset, a big time, and never try to lose an opportunity to learn from people customers, communities, public services, elected people, whatever. I think always great to capture a few takeaways and learn what we should do better as a company or as an organization. The second thing is only something I've been privileged because early on I was tasked to lead and open new markets for the company. So it was not only France, I was in charge of opening markets in the Netherlands, in Belgium, in Italy, in Spain, Portugal, in Greece. I was very young. And I started discovering this global, I'm calling that now global kind of cultural awareness, the ability to learn more from other cultures, not just to respect them, but actually to learn how do you get the best alignment with a customer, with, again, some partners you have in any country in the world, to show the unique value we provide in that country at that moment. And that to me has been a big and a huge opportunity to grow as a leader, is understanding, of course, the subtleties between explicit cultures, like, of course, Americans are being very direct, which I love. And some of the cultures that I love too, by the way, on the other extreme, which are much more implicit, particularly in Asia. If you go to Japan, which is another country I love as well, you're gonna have probably so many, like 3-4 minutes, going 10 minutes just to bore customers, just to apologize on something didn't go as expected, to create some trust and have the ability to come back after 2 years and open a real discussion with them and develop some business and trust and build on that. So that's another big learning along the way, which I keep learning, because clearly on the way you build that trust across cultures and beyond boundaries as well. And anyway, I mean, there's many others on leadership as well, for sure, because at the end of the day, I think what I learned the most of the past decade, I would say in particular, is, you could, and I think I've been someone, it's not something I've said myself, who cares deeply about people and care deeply about the impact we have as a company holistically. But I know for a fact that you have to care, but you have to drive to connect that with the mission and the impact you want to have. And you have to care with accountability, as I say usually, which is caring for people, as you know very well, because I think this is your mantra, is the platform by which you're going to build that safety network with people, that sense of security and trust, that level of confidence will enable them with you to go far beyond what you have expected from traditional relations, transactions, and business sides. And to me, when you do that, you can equally, and you should be super clear about the accountability that comes with it, because so anyway, that's something I've learned also after many mistakes I did and more on the way.
Yeah, we've all made mistakes, but you bring up a few great words there. I'm not a big fan of keywords, but trust. What we've always found is that the management team, number one, that trusts each other to talk straight with each other and understand you're not coming from malintent or whatever, you're coming for the same goal, works most effectively together. Another expression we use a lot is clear is kind. And to your point, the clearer you are about the objectives and the impact, economic, social, whatnot, the kinder you are. If you're not clear, you're not being very kind to the other person because they don't know what to do, basically.
Yes.
Would you call that positive leadership?
I would call that part of positive leadership, Mark, absolutely. Positive leadership is another passion of mine, which has been built around a few disciplines going together: positive psychology, neuroscience, and mindfulness and other techniques and tools that people can use to, to have a strongest sense of themselves. And so in the positive leadership, it's about, first of all, it's about taking care of yourself, because if you don't start with you, physically, mentally, from the cognitive standpoint as well, there's nothing you can achieve really with that is lasting and with success people. And it's about extending that to others. And the way you communicate positively your desire to support them, to grow them, and to build something with them, which means that, as an example as well, on the leadership learning curve, I changed my leadership style quite a lot from a top-down traditional leader, yes, who cared for people, but it was really all about driving action, results, KPIs, scorecard, blah, blah, blah. All the things you could expect at scale, which I was doing for many years. And I changed that into becoming what has been called, as being a coach-like leader. And I learned a ton from a good friend of mine, Michael Bougestanier, who's been writing this wonderful book, on coaching habits I had on my podcast on positive leadership. And it's about three things, as you know, what he says. And of course, about practicing three things. One is about being curious, very curious, incredibly curious about the other. And not talking like I was doing for many years, selling, but really deep listening. Number two is often. You don't coach once a year or because there's a moment for coaching. No, it comes actually, it should come naturally. Sometimes just 3 minutes on the fly. You capture something great or something that actually could be a problem blocker for the person. You're going to get her to realize that, wow, it's an inhibitor to your success, and be aware of what just happened, that situation, the way you interpret that, and so on. And number three, it's about being lazy, which I love as well. Not that I'm lazy at all. I've been pretty hardworking, like many of us. But I learned that indeed it's not a good service to others to do their job. In other words, as a leader, you are there to grow others so they can actually expand, scale, and become a wonderful self-leader. Actually, one of the best, highest satisfaction in my professional life is all about people. And the number of leaders I've seen growing as CEOs of other companies, becoming company vice president, Microsoft, many other places, and I see their notes coming every week, sometimes from anywhere in the world, Japan, etc. And it's such a huge delight when you've been somehow little bit part of that growth, and you see them succeeding.
Yeah, without a doubt. A lot of coaches, I compare a lot of things to sports also, and because they're very similar. And the best legacy for anybody, including a sports head coach, is to see all his assistant coaches become head coaches somewhere else. And that is the job, if you will. And, it's interesting because, a big part of our firm also is the attraction of talent to our clients, because we can represent our clients as leaders who care with proof that they really care. But it doesn't mean, like you say, just hugging. It means people we attract want to make money and have impact at the same time.
Absolutely.
And one of the things I've always found, and love your thoughts on this, is the best ROI is when a person, be it a player on the field or in the office, makes a mistake. Firing him gives you a terrible ROI unless he's done it 10 times. But if it's once or twice, you bring the player off the field, you go over, like you said, what happened, and you say, I believe in you, get out there and make it happen. That isn't even money related. That's the heart and soul of everything.
Absolutely. And something I actually had a great dialogue on with one of my guests on the podcast, Melody Hobson, that I'm sure you may know. And Melody had this wonderful, she said, the feedback is a gift. And I love that, because it's true. If you really are candid and gracious enough to give the feedback to the people that they deserve in a constructive way, in a positive way, so that they can learn from that, it's wonderful. And so many managers are just afraid of giving any feedback, right? They just struggle with talking about anything.
Sometimes I think they're afraid if they give feedback, they're going to get feedback.
Exactly. And they don't like that.
And the young people, I'm tired of saying the young people. I mean, come on. The young people, they want
new generation.
I know. They want it all the time. They want it a lot. And never been a big fan, is another discussion, about quarterly reporting. I understand why it's important, but decisions are made way too short term because of that. And young people, as much as they want feedback, they're looking for a longer impact and whatnot. And I wanted to ask, going back to startups then. Startup, you got to raise money and got to get the business going. It's 24/7, bam, bam, bam. What's your thoughts on how a leader? Because I had a managing director of Y Combinator tell me once, he said, one way or another, you are building a culture. Even if you're around like crazy in a startup, you're building a culture. And if you bring in that one wrong person into that culture, especially for a startup, like Microsoft and IBM can afford one bad hire, they can't.
No, agree. No, I love so much actually entrepreneurship, Mark. And when I told you about, in a way, when I joined Microsoft, by the way, it was a startup company. It was just a few hundred people. That's the reason why I joined Microsoft. And Memsoft, the French company, was like 15 people. And today, one of my privilege, again, both Microsoft and with my foundation, is to work with entrepreneurs. At Microsoft, we built sponsor an initiative called Entrepreneurship of Positive Impact, where we have, and we are enabling 1,000 impact entrepreneurs. What do? Well, the big solution to meet the 17 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, everything across climate change to social inclusion, to hunger, etc., etc. And we support them from technology standpoint, of course, with innovation, with coaching as well. I created a leadership initiative to coach them as well, and so that our people can learn from them, actually. And number 3, going to market. And with my foundation, I have the privilege as well to coach a dozen of young kids all the time who are building the new impact or mission-led enterprise. And to me, back to your question, there's a couple of things which are fundamental, which I'm spending time on coaching. Actually, next Monday, I'm going to spend 3 years doing a coaching session with 50 young of such entrepreneurs.
Nice.
And he's going to start with always where I start, which is about self-confidence. And the way you build that self-confidence in yourself, and giving them stories about myself and where I lost confidence and where I've been winning confidence, and the way you build that. And then I continue, of course, talking about the why. I'm so convinced in my personal life as well that if you're not clear about your why, Mark, my why, Jean-Philippe, and your why as individual, on why you do what you do in your life, whether it is your job, all the time you spend on the job, particular, your family, your friends, social circles, then you've got a problem, because it means you are not probably spending time on the thing that matter the most for you in terms of your passion, your strengths, and so on. So that why to me is super critical, and it's both a personal equation, but it's an organization equation as well, because you have the same why to work for a company, and you need to be super clear as a leader of a startup. Why would people love to join you to build the change or build that solution you want to bring to the market? So that's another big one to me on the way I think particularly this new generation of entrepreneurs is going to change a little bit the leadership paradigm that we see in most conventional organizations.
Yeah, that's brilliant. You know, it goes back a little bit to the sports thing again. When you get to the playoffs and the championship, obviously they want to make money like everybody. Money is good. It keeps actually things going. You can't do it without the money. But when they're playing to the playoffs, they're not motivated by their contract. They're not motivated by their salary. They're motivated by their teammates, the fans, the cities behind them. It's the heart. You know, they say the thing that fills people's hearts and souls more than anything is belonging. That's how they win. And I interviewed this was a National Hockey League executive a while back, and he said, you know, every year we want to win the championship, but we're not dumb. You know, you're not going to win it every year. But what we do mandate in our culture is to have a winning season every year. And that takes leadership of everybody, not just the players. With all the different cultures you've worked with, it must be fascinating to put teams together like that.
No, I agree. It's interesting what you said, because one of my guests was the head coach of the Seahawks as well. Of course, a famous legend, right? and as you know, he's built this philosophy is called lead to win. And it's all about this winning culture, which is very holistic. It is not just you know, on the ground, actually on the field with the players, of course, in the gyms, in the prep. It's also about the fans, it's about the city, and the way they are aligning that to win collectively. So I found that very interesting as well. I love the sports analogy.
Yeah, he talked about the secretaries in the office, the ushers in the stadium, because they see them all the time, and there's a culture happening. The janitor in Nassau story type of thing.
Oh yeah, this one is well known.
Yeah. So, hey, listen, as president of the National Transformation Partnerships at Microsoft, you encourage the use, obviously, of responsible AI, a big thing right now. We're actually working with AI for good in healthcare, as where it could be the industry most hit by AI. There'll always be manipulators, no matter what you bring on, manipulators and doing bad things. How do leaders who care, not to be cute, how do they care about being responsible and ethical, positive and strong, and yet walk that right path still?
It's a great question. It's a question, I guess, that transcends AI, but I can start with AI and extend that as well. You know, I think in many ways, and you touch a little bit on that, Mark, it's about setting the right culture in the first place. I believe so much beyond, of course, setting a mission for your organization and some core values that are not just a slide, but the way you live them every day, the way you live them well or not sometimes, because we all make mistakes, and the way you create a very particular environment for people to bring their best. That's a cultural environment. So to me, in that ethical issue, which is with AI and many things we have to do as business leaders, it's all about the clarity of that culture and the ability for people from the bottom of the organization, the first line, not just the CEO, of course, to bring the problems they have in the way the company behaves well or not well, in the way the company is responding to customers, communities, well or not well. And I think having this openness and clarity on what is the essence of the business, what they are supposed to do, and sometimes there's very complicated issues. I mean, as you can see in the world now, in the US and around the world, between social inclusion issue, racism issues, many things, geopolitics as well, it creates a lot of anxiety and a lot of demand from people on their company and what it should be. So I think having that culture and having some key principles on the way you want to add the dialogue so that people are super clear on, yeah, it's a dialogue, but at the end of the day, the company needs as well to make decisions. Leadership needs to decide based on some key principles. And I think this is what you see a little bit more now on the AI ethical principles as well. As a company, we've been working hard on that. We keep, because there's a lot more to do, with 6 core principles on fairness, on diversity and inclusion, on accountability and transparency, and of course, privacy security, to make sure that we harness that into the building of AI algorithms and tools that we provide to our customers. And we support our customers to do the same as they develop very sophisticated AI solution today, so that actually they detect, because we all have biases as humans, for sure. So when it's kind of funny when people talk about AI, being biases. Well, guess what? It's coming from us.
Exactly.
And so no, this is astonishing. And so in a way, AI is going to challenge us to do better than our traditional way of responding to question and handling, business issues. It could be a good thing, again, if you get the right sub-principle, the right governance process to make sure you are eyes to eyes with your stakeholders, not just your people, customers, and others, asking the right question and the tough question as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. A fellow you may know by the name of Bill Gates said something recently about we're going to get to the point where you're just going to be able to ask the computer to do stuff. And it reminded me of early days of Star Trek, where Mr. Spock used to say, yeah, computer, and it said, working, how can I help you? And type of thing. So it's, there's always going to be people that are going to try to use things in a bad way, and we just got to be stronger on the other side. And you mentioned about a couple questions here. In LA, we say, keep them wanting more so we can do a sequel. So we'll have to do a sequel. But, we work with leaders who care about the value and the well-being of their talent, physical, mental, for sure right now, and financial. You're the president of the Live for Good Foundation, which you've for your family and whatnot, which I love. And it, unlocking the potential that young people have from all walks of life, what we call untapped talent that we work a lot to. It could be no degrees, it could be refugees, veterans, formerly incarcerated. It's incredible. So the depth that it has and the impact on families, businesses, and community. Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, this is a foundation, Mark, I created with my family back late 2015, so more than 7 years ago. And I did it to leave the values and the vision of my late son, Gabriel. And, as a family, I've got my wife, my 2 daughters. So like a hand, 5 fingers. When you lose one of the finger, it's pretty hard to imagine what your hand is going to do or not do anymore. Right. And so we decided pretty quickly to give us kind of a North Star to say, hey, Gabriel had some very strong values. And, he sent me a message a year before he passed away, where he said, I have this vital desire to help changing people's lives positively. And he was already doing a number of things, and he created a website called Live for Good, actually, which is a name foundation, to do some, to raise some money to help people and NGOs, particularly in Malaysia, helping out with Habitat for Humanity, which is a well-known US NGO, and he loved it, and he wanted to do more there. So anyway, we decided to bring the best we could do as a family, and many friends that are joining us, of course, and many other organizations, to unleash the potential of youth from 18 to 30 years old in my home country in France, from all kinds of backgrounds. Because I believe that one of the big problems we have in society today is not to have the voice of all that anti-youth from all backgrounds. And in France, like in any country, you have so much diversity and so much challenges because of that diversity not well lived in many places in the country.
Yeah.
And so having them as a cohort of young entrepreneurs, which we do, like we select 50 of them every year, actually in 3 regions of France. Now we're expanding to more. And we have a curriculum, which is not a teacher, it's actually collective intelligence with the 50 of them. And of course, we have a number of people coming in, like myself and others, to develop their positive leadership skills, of course, because that's something that I believe in so much. But they are already very strong on the why, by the way. Those kids are clearly understand why they want to do what they want to do to change the world. And then we help them building from scratch a startup that will measure its success, not just financially. Of course, we teach them as well, educate them how to make money, because if they don't make any money, it's not going to work. It's not going to drive. So we are super clear. But the obsession is not going to be about rich and famous. The obsession is going to be about how can I actually recycle 10 megatons of plastics in the country? How can I get jobs, give jobs to actually 600 handicapped people in my city? How can I define a completely new food system in my county, as an example, with a lot less CO2 emitted, and so on and so on. So anyway, there are some wonderful projects, and it's like an extended family. We have more than 500 kids that have followed this program. We are expanding to multiple regions in the country, and some of them are starting to get traction with like 50 employees, raising $5-6 million of capital, expanding. Awesome. And we have all kind of kids. So it's just joy and fulfillment for us and me as a coach as well, and the rest of my family to spend time with them.
No, congratulations on that. And that shows how incredibly important that why is, because then the money will come if you go after the why and yes. You're making them into it. There's an older video, 2014 or whatever, that was called The Corporation. I saw it a little while back again on YouTube, and the first corporation that was formed was basically had to be a public benefit corp. And
absolutely.
Period. That's the only way you can have it.
Yes. Yes.
It was amazing. So last question, a client told me way back in 2021, he said, Mark, the year 2020 was the year that flew by slowly. I said, well, that's an interesting term, but I get it. And we all think it's like 2020 was yesterday and also years ago. And now we're almost to the end of 2023. You used to say time flies. Now you say time zooms. Sorry to teams, but time teams.
Teams as well.
With all that, what are you most grateful for? And also, what are you most hopeful for?
What I'm most grateful for, Mark, is again, having the opportunity to meet, engage, help grow all those kids. In a way, those kids and related positive leaders, people I got to meet with my podcast. I mean, it's a wonderful opportunity where I learn. I've got CEOs of the largest companies in the world. I've got, I'm going to have very soon, which is going to be a blast, Martin Seligman, who is the godfather of positive psychology. I've got social entrepreneurs, NGOs, leaders, and I learn from those guys. And the same in my coaching relationship with those kids, because they inspire me in the way they do frugal innovation. They do some amazing thing with nothing, right? They are not raising millions of dollars at the beginning. It's like 1,000 euros max if they can, and then 2,000. and I love that kind of back to the basics of really radical innovation with impact in mind and purpose in mind. And that's what I'm grateful for, because the more you spend time with such people, the more you feel great about life, despite all the tragedies happening in the world, which are terrible. But I've decided to spend my time on that to make sure I can fulfill myself and can give back, of course, to a number of those people on what gives me joy as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I'm delighted that you are a leader who cares, for sure. And I think you got that way back and have continued it and passing it on. And so I really appreciate your insights. I appreciate you being on this series, and I look forward to watching all your podcasts and keep going also. So congrats on that too. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mark. It was a pleasure as well, because I think we need a lot more leaders who care and who have this positive mindset in the world.
I'm with you all the way. Thanks.